Sony has just raised their prices again. After the past year of being assured by Bloomberg, by Review Tech USA, by every analyst on the planet that the Switch 2 is going to go up in price because and that's going to kill the momentum for the console. I'm so smart. Oh, I know a lot about technology and business. After a year of that, Sony raised the price once, and they raised it again. Switch 2 is still at $450. Cheaper in Japan. So Sony has raised the price point for the PS5 again. After all this propaganda that the PS5 was selling really, really well, and that Sony was in a good position, and that this was some major console. We were told that the PlayStation 5 would be more successful than the Switch 2. And yet, here we are looking at another price hike. After one we already got. And not a single person is talking about it. I already made a video talking about, Sony and their TOS, but this is, a completely different issue. This is so weird to me. That people have spent the past year making fan fiction about how Nintendo was going to raise the price for the Switch 2, and that how that would kill its momentum, and how nobody would want to buy a console. There was this weird double standard here where people were pretending that that Nintendo Switch 2 games were too overpriced, and that the hardware was super expensive. The hardware thing especially is interesting because the Switch 2 is the most affordable console on the market. It is more affordable than the PS5. It is more affordable than the Series X. It is more affordable than a Steam Deck. But the entire narrative was always that it launched and was way too overpriced. Meanwhile, I'm looking at tablets that cost $3,000. Well, not a tablet, that's all the accessories, but I was gonna pay $3,000 for a tablet and all the accessories I was gonna get with it. I was making plans to do that. I'm looking at gaming PCs that cost $5,000. I'm looking at what the rest of the industry is doing, and I just find it very, 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 very difficult to believe that people are really coming away from the Switch 2 thinking that this thing is overpriced. When you look at the competition, when you look at everything else up there, the Switch 2 has always been priced very reasonably, and it has not had any price hikes. Even after the tariffs, even after the raising costs, they have not done that for the console itself. It's one of the weird things about this is that Sony has raised their prices twice now over the past year, and there hasn't been a peep out of the community. Nobody's brought this up. Nobody's complained about it. In fact, I just reacted to a video from Review Tech USA claiming that Sony sales were through the roof. Last year. Oh, it outsold the Switch 2, and I was quick to point out that, it went on sale, during the holiday season. Again, there was, it was a cope, essentially. Switch 2 is obviously outperforming PS5, obviously, obviously it's a more affordable console, obviously it has better games, obviously it's a better value, but, the entire community is just rallying to try and, downplay reality. We were told several times by a variety of sources that Nintendo would definitely raise their prices this year, and here we are seeing Sony do it twice before Nintendo does. And in fact, Nintendo's even released statements saying that they're not going to do it. So again, the entire giant Kamehameha cope, regarding the price points, that has completely fallen apart now. You are going to say that the price hikes are going to kill Switch 2, even though that they haven't got them and other companies are implementing them first. It's it doesn't make any sense. It is just straight up delusional how we always have to go through this song and dance. We always have to go through these people crying about Nintendo Switch 2 prices as they gladly consume far more expensive products from inferior developers like PlayStation, like Valve, like Xbox. All of those are far more expensive and less successful than Nintendo Switch 2. And it's just something that people are really going to have to wrap their minds around. It's something that we're seeing becoming more and more prevalent, is that the entire industry is just falling apart. What we're seeing is just the industry rallying, trying their hardest to create the illusion that Nintendo's struggling right now and that they're not selling consoles, and that just is very obviously not true. Every single time they release actual numbers or release an actual game, clearly they're doing very well. But yet, because of this endless speculation and this endless damage control from these unreliable sources, people really do think that the Switch 2 could potentially fail. And there's a new cope going on now that oh yeah, the Switch 2, it's going to be the new 3DS. Never mind that 3DS was the winner of that console generation. Let's portray this in a way where the 3DS is less successful than the original DS. Let's try and damage control that. Oh yeah, but please ignore the iPhone and what an iconic thing that was at the time. It's stupid. Okay, it is downright ridiculous how much the community tried to rally around damage control. How much the community tried to make this into a thing. How this has become such a giant cope. It's something that I do think needs to be spelled out more among gamers and among the community. Why exactly do we have to keep putting up with this? Why are we told that Nintendo price hikes are inevitable and that consoles are inevitably going to sell less, when that very obviously is not true? We're seeing that more and more every year, is that Nintendo is establishing itself better and better to compete with Sony's underhanded tactics, and yet the industry still thinks it's 1990 and that PlayStation's in a position where they can just buy out third-party studios and just poach all of Nintendo's best third-party talent. It's ridiculous. It's something that I think really needs to be spelled out for the community, is that these reports are wrong. They are just straight up fabricated. They're not true. Okay, and when you take that into consideration, when you realize that, what you come away with is this realization that if they're not true, then clearly Nintendo has to be doing well, because clearly the games are still being made and they're still selling. So whatever these companies may say, I am still going to buy and enjoy these Nintendo products no matter what. And once you're in that position, there's really nothing they can possibly do to damage control what you're doing.